Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How are you, dear student? Hope you are fine, good, and great. Okay, student. Today we are going to know about the force of friction. That what is force of friction? From the name force, this means this is the types of force. Let's see what is force of friction. On the next page, we are going to discuss and know about the force of friction. Okay, let's see the definition of the force of friction. The first one, force of friction is the force between two things rubbing together. What do you mean by rubbing together and two things? Let's suppose if we normally, like in the lower grade books, they said, just they give the simple example. When we rub two things, like I rub these two hands, my hands, so this means there is a force produced. So this force is called force of friction. One thing also remember, force of friction is produced in so many different area in our daily life. One thing is more remember that when the car is moving, so between the tire and the road, like the car is moving toward this direction, so there is a force of friction on this, the tire of the car is this direction between the tire of the car and the road. So another thing is clear, is coming from this diagram, like force of friction is always opposite to the applied force. Like the applied force, let's suppose we apply the force on this tire, it moves in this direction. So here the opposing force or friction force is produced on this tire, which will be opposite to the applied force. Okay, the force of friction is always opposite in the direction of the motion. Like already we said, it is usually or always it is opposite to the direction of the applied force or to the direction of the motion. Like the wheel is moving toward this direction, and the friction so the friction of force will be in opposite direction. Okay, force does not start the motion, it stops the motion. One thing more remember, the force of friction is always try to stop the motion of the body. Like this, why? Because this is the opposite to the applied force. Okay, next one, force between the solid surface is divided into three groups, which is the static friction, kinetic friction, and rolling friction. Like let's suppose this is the solid surface, like normally the floor or earth. So if we apply the force on this block, so if we drag the block or drag this table, let's suppose this is the table or block, if we apply the force so on the solid surface, so here this force of friction, like this is the applied force, the friction will be in the opposite direction. So this force of friction is divided into three parts. The first one is static friction, kinetic, and rolling friction. But here we will discuss the static and kinetic, not the rolling one. We will not consider the rolling friction in this section. Okay, the force, now let's see the first one, the to the static friction. What is static friction? The force of friction acting on the object before it start to move is called force of friction. If we have the object, so is in the rest position, so if this like during the rest position, this means there is a force of friction on this block. This force of friction is called static. Static mean in rest form. Okay, the next one, the force of friction that act on the object while it is in the motion is called the force of kinetic friction. Okay, for example, if we apply some force on the object and this object is start motion, so during the motion time, like it's move from one place to another place, or when the motion is produced, so during the motion time there is also a types of friction is produced. So this types of friction is called kinetic friction. Okay, there are 3 points. Let's see the 3 points. What is happen in this? Like, what is the meaning of this 3 point? The first one, if of S means static friction is greater than applied force, the object is at rest. Mean, for example, like the applied force is 10 Newton, but this is not enough to start the motion in the block, so this means the static force is greater than the applied force. Like whenever we have a big block or we have a big stone, so we try to start the motion but we cannot, so this means the static friction is more than the applied force. Okay, the next one, k of f mean kinetic friction is equal to f it move with the constant velocity. Like if we apply the force on surface, so this mean like if the kinetic friction and applied force is equal, so this mean the object is in constant velocity, like the object will be moved in the constant velocity. The next one, if of f mean the applied force is greater than kinetic friction, so the object will be in acceleration, like sometime it will move fast, sometime it will move slow, so in different thing. Okay, this is the normal force, this is the block of mass, and the upside this is the normal force, downward the weight. When we usually think that the normal force is equal to the weight. Okay, one thing remember here, when the block of mass is sliding or motion, so there is a friction is produced, so this friction is denoted by mu, which is called, like every surface is its own coefficient of friction or mu, like the steel surface, wood, the cement surface, and so on, our road, there are different, every surface has its own mu value. We will see in the next lecture to solve some example. Okay, the next one, this is denoted the normal force, which is equal to weight, and this is equal to mg, mean normal force is equal to mg. Okay, next page, let's see this is the value of how can we find the friction force. Like friction force is equal to mu time n. Now we know that n is equal to mg, so friction force is also, we can write mu, the coefficient of surface value, like different types of surface. Instead of n we can also use m dot g, so this formula will be used for the to find the friction force. Let's see, mu value depend on the surface, like what types of surface is that, wood surface, plastic surface, like this table is wood surface. If we goes down to the floor downward, so there is the cement surface, and so on, like carpet surface. Every surface is its own mu value or coefficient of friction value. Okay, the next one, we in this video we are going to solve some problem which are related to the force of friction. Okay, thank you so much for being stay with us. So just keep watching us, and if you have any types of questions, so you can ask. Okay, next video we will solve some example. Thank you so much.